Hello, and welcome to the fifth video in the series that the Chippewa County Historical Society is doing to be posted on YouTube. It's the Christmas season, and welcome also to the living room of my home. My wife Karelian is really one who loves to decorate for Christmas, and so you will see some Christmas decorations up and a sort of a festive mood. But I want to caution that clashes with the general theme of the story I'm going to be telling in two parts, and this is part one here in our living room, of two Sugar Islanders who went to Karelia. It is a somber tale, unhappy in many ways for people, fortunately not for the Sugar Island couple. So that's just something, that clash, that we're going to have to live with. This video differs from the previous four we've created and posted on YouTube. Those four treated a piece of our local history, such as how the rapids in the St. Mary's River shaped our history. In contrast to general themes like that, this video is a story of a pair of Sugar Islanders named Lawrence and Sylvia Hokkanen. Actually, I'll use the Finnish forms of their first names, Lori and Sylvia. They were both children of Finnish immigrants who came to this area as part of a massive wave of European immigration to North America. Between 1815 and 1930, 37 million Europeans immigrated to the United States, and another 5 million to Canada. In fact, between about 1870 and 1914, about 10% of Finland's population emigrated to North America. But Lori and Sylvie's story involves a reverse immigration. They went over to Europe for 7 years. There's so much to tell, we split the story into two videos that should each run about 12 minutes. If you watch this first one, we hope you'll be unable to resist watching the second one. In about 1990, I was doing research for my book, Sugar Island Sampler. As I talked to islanders, several of them said to me, "Have you talked to the Hokkanens yet?" I'd never met them, but since so many people mentioned them, I called them, told them about my writing plans, and asked if they would share knowledge of island history with me. They were very gracious and invited me to their home on the island. What a story I heard. It has little to do with Sugar Island, except that they grew up there, as did many of Finnish ancestry. But their story is part of a much larger one that's not very widely known. They had an unusual and ultimately harrowing experience when, as idealistic newlyweds in 1934, they went to Karelia, a province of the Soviet Union, literally to help build the workers' paradise. The Soviet government had an active campaign to recruit both Canadian and U.S. citizens of Finnish heritage to go to Karelia, which bordered on Finland, to use their skills and even bring tools and machinery to help develop a relatively backward part of their country. Many Finns had immigrated to Karelia already, so Finnish was widespread there, and North Americans of Finnish descent would blend in fairly easily. Lori was a skilled mechanic, familiar with boats, having grown up on Sugar Island. Those talents served him well in getting good job assignments in Karelia. It also helped at one point that he played trumpet, since that was part of the reason he was reassigned from a logging camp to a ski factory in Petrozavodsk, which was the capital of Karelia. Sylvia also grew up on Sugar Island. Her father, Frank Kuusisto, was a leader in the Finnish community there. He donated land on which the Finn Hall was built. Such halls were common wherever there was a significant Finnish population in North America. She had 2 years of teaching experience on Sugar Island and loved the idea of becoming a teacher in Karelia. Here's a picture of Sylvia with her father and what appears to be the newly constructed Finn Hall in the background. Lori and Sylvia married in December of 1932. The picture below was taken soon after the wedding, and it appears on the cover of the book about their experiences, which they wrote almost 60 years after their marriage and 50 years after they returned to Sugar Island from the Soviet Union. The Great Depression was on here when they married. The chance to start fresh elsewhere and help build a worker's paradise, part of that recruitment pitch, was very appealing, so they decided to go. Laurie was able to sell the sawmill he owned, giving them cash to finance their trip. They set out for Karelia in May of 1934. They brought little with them besides their clothes, 1 pound of coffee, and a Simmons hide-a-bed. They first set foot in the Soviet Union at Leningrad, and given Laurie's experience in a sawmill and cutting logs, they were sent to a Karelian town called Utua, now renamed Kalevala, where he was put to work in the woods. It's only about 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. Both of them also worked for a while up there at a brick factory. In September, Sylvie got permission to go to Petrozavodsk to attend the Karelian Pedagogical Institute, where she enrolled in studies to qualify for teaching in Karelia. Petrozavodsk is the capital of Karelia. They hoped to get Laurie transferred to work in a ski factory there, and it turned out that his ability to play a trumpet soon helped him to obtain orders to go there. The factory had a band and could use another trumpet player. You never know what talents can become critical in your life's path. Here's a picture of Laurie with a small band on Sugar Island 3 years before the Karelian trip. Life was not easy there. Food was in short supply. That pound of coffee they brought was truly a luxury that didn't last long. The bed bugs were voracious. A local strategy was to put the legs of their bed into cans of water, which provided a moat to prevent the bugs from crawling up the bed legs. I thought that was pretty clever. Seemed ingenious, in fact. It worked for a while, until it didn't. The bed bugs learned to drop onto the bed from the ceiling. Laurie and Sylvie's experience dealing with food shortages, bed bugs, petty bureaucrats, lack of freedom, and cold weather, all the while maintaining a hopeful spirit. It's a great example of sisu. That's a Finnish word that captures the spirit of courage and perseverance in the face of adversity. In 1936, Sylvie was told that she had to leave the Pedagogical Institute. The Hokkanens weren't Russian citizens, which was now required to teach in the schools. So they applied for Russian citizenship, not realizing that they would need to give up their U.S. citizenship and passports to do so. Laurie wrote, "Had this happened in 1937, we probably wouldn't have done it. But in 1936, things were going well for us, and Sylvie really looked forward to teaching." It wasn't long before we realized what a big mistake that had been. But after Sylvie started teaching, she was earning twice as much as Laurie. Things were looking up briefly. Laurie told how for the first couple of years they were in Karelia, the country operated on a 6-day week. Sundays weren't special in an atheist country. People worked 7-hour days for 5 days. Then they had a day off. But the government decided to switch society to a 7-day week. And then workers had to put in 6 8-hour days per week with a day off. And another change, if a worker was late to work, he or she would be fined 10% of weekly pay for the first offense. And no alarm clocks were available in the stores. Fortunately, the Hokkanens had brought theirs from the States, and I forgot to mention that, along with that pound of coffee. Officially, these changes were approved by a vote of the people, but they knew that to vote against them might result in being jailed. Laurie wrote, and I quote, It seemed impossible to those of us who had lived in a free society that such things could happen, but they did happen." End quote. There was no change in weekly pay. If you do the math, this means that they worked about 17% more hours per year for the same yearly pay. How's that for an economic plan? We'll continue this story in a second video. To bait the hook for the second video, I'll just say that as 1936 rolled into 1937, the tone of life was getting more ominous. The story for the Hokanens thankfully had a happy ending. That was not the case for many, and perhaps not for the majority of North American Finns who went to Karelia. Many were arrested for no apparent reason. Those who were left behind began to wonder, what did they do? Can they all be guilty? Laurie and Sylvie's daughter, Anita Hokanen Middleton, persuaded them to write their story years later, and she created drawings that appeared at the start of each chapter. Here is one of the drawings making the point to close part 1.